Hello, everybody, and welcome to Red Wings Daily, presented to you by FanArch. I'm your host, Kirk MckNight, author of The Voices of Hockey, Broadcasters Reflect on the Fastest Game on Earth, and coming to you from the southwest corner of Washington State. Now, if that sounds familiar to you, it's probably because you've been watching the Weather Channel the last couple of days. And on the news, you'll have seen that there's a lot of flooding going on in this area of the country. Of course, with the Pacific Northwest, you're going to expect rain this time of year. But when you include the high tides that take place as the Columbia empties into the Pacific Ocean, that's just a recipe for disaster when you have this much rainfall in consecutive days. So there's roadways closed, the farms are really inundated with water. We've got water all the way up to buildings that you're not expecting to see a lot of the time. So it's record rainfall, or record flooding, I guess you could say. Luckily, I live on the higher ground, not as affected as much. A little bit farther up the highway from the river as others are. So, speaking of high ground, though, the Red Wings took the higher ground in the Atlantic Division last night by winning their third straight game, beating the Calgary Flames 4-3. The Lightning and Bruins were idle, so the Red Wings were able to leapfrog them and back into first place. Now, talking a little bit about last night's win, it was a 4-3 victory. It was 4-0 by the midway point of the second period, so the Red Wings were really coasting. Of those first four goals, well, the first three, two of the three were scored by DeBrincat, and another was scored by Axel. So the reason I bring that up is this: by the time DeBrincat scored his second goal, that gave him the co-lead with Larks for most goals on the team. Well, the reason I say that is Larks didn't take long to steal back the lead and have it all by himself when he scored his goal. So he scored the 17th of the season. So Larks is at 17, DeBrincat's at 16. Red Wings were looking like they were coasting up 4-0 going into the third period. By the time that Calgary scored their first goal, Gibson was about 135 minutes of playing time without giving up a goal. That's going all the way back to the second period of Saturday night's game in Seattle. So he gives up a goal, and then a minute and 5 seconds later, he gives up another goal. Okay, so 4-2. No need to panic just yet. Well, the Calgary Flames scored with about 4.5 minutes left to go in the game to make it a one-shot game. Obviously, it started to create a little bit of an unsettling feeling around the bench, thinking, are we going to blow the save or not? Luckily, they didn't blow the save. They held on, won 4-3. Basically, now are points in their last 6 games, their third straight win. They have 7 out of a possible 8 points on the road right now. And looking at the game specifically, a couple of things about the game, especially that they made it so close. The Red Wings were 3 for 3 on the penalty kill. Now, that really didn't seem like that much of a factor when they're up 4-0, but when you only win by 1 goal, the fact that you went 3 for 3 on the penalty kill, that really starts to stand out a lot. I got a text from Ken Cal. I said, yikes, I said, it's a good thing there's only 3 periods tonight. And Ken said, nobody's going to remember anything but the score when it comes to April. So that's actually a good point. The 2 points are what's the most important, and they got the 2 points, got themselves back in first. They were outshot once again. But Gibby, with the win, is now 8-7-1 on the season. So he was looking pretty abysmal, a couple weeks ago. I think he was a 4-7-1 at one point. Really struggling a lot, but he's been winning and winning. So good for him. Coming off that shutout win Monday night against Vancouver, still was able to win, held them off to the point where he secured the victory. So going into tonight's game, we got to expect that Talbs is going to be on the slate rather than Gibby. Give Gibby a little rest as he prepares for probably going to come in on Saturday to finish up the road trip and take on the Blackhawks at the United Center. So speaking of Blackhawks, a former Blackhawk who plays for the Red Wings now by the name of Patrick Kane inched 2 points closer to passing Mike Modano. He is within 10 points right now of tying Modano, so within 11 points of becoming the all-time points leader for a U.S.-born player. So great job. 8 points over his last 6 games for Showtime, and he's now 3 goals shy of 500. He hasn't scored a goal in his last 2 games, and a lot of the chatter around the Red Wings circles, I'm sure, has been, is he going to get 500 in Chicago? Well, short of a hat trick, on Saturday, we got to see what happens tonight against Edmonton. If he gets 1, maybe even 2 goals, it seems like that it's a foregone conclusion that he'll get number 500 in Chicago, but we'll just wait to see how that all pans out. But awesome job. He's been doing great. He's been assisting DeBrincat as always. Those two are always just on one end or the other as far as goals and assists. So they're taking care of business, whether it's in the net himself, scoring the game winner in Seattle on Saturday, or just contributing on 2 goals. He's always a scorer. He's always just getting it done. And I don't think it'll take too long before he passes Modano on that points record list. Now, with it being Thursday, it's time to talk about throwbacks. So on Throwback Thursday, on this edition, we're going to go to December 26, 1996. Now, that game, if you're a Sergei Fedorov fan, obviously is already etched into your mind. Now, by the time Fedorov retired from hockey, Alexander Ovechkin, was plenty of goals away from passing him for all-time goals leader for a Russian-born player. But in his heyday, Fedorov, part of a just offensive juggernaut Red Wings team that just were always in the mix. And so on December 26, 1996, that is 3 months to the day before Bloody Wednesday, and realize that this is that season in which the Red Wings finally won the Stanley Cup at the end of the year. So this was a pretty magical season. It wasn't that 62-win season of the year before where they lost in the Western Conference Final to the Avalanche. This was this magical season, and the magic, obviously there was plenty enough room for this kind of magic, not just on Bloody Wednesday and not just in the playoffs, but going into the new year. 5 goals scored for Fedorov. The Red Wings only scored 5 goals, and Fedorov's 5th goal was the overtime game-winning goal. A little bit about that. The name of the goalie for the Washington Capitals was Jim Carey. Now that's pretty interesting because I'm pretty sure Jim Carey is Canadian, and I'm talking about the superstar Jim Carey, and I'm pretty sure that Jim Carey for the Capitals is probably Canadian too. I can't imagine those two showing up for the same reservation in a restaurant, but who knows. But a little bit about Fedorov in this game is the fact that Vladimir Konstantinov, this is something that I thought was an amazing stat, was Vladimir assisted on 4 of those 5 goals. And then Vladimir and Igor Larionov had the 2 assists on 2 of those goals too. So both, assisted by both of those 2 in 2 goals. And then another one who was contributing was Fetisov. The only member of the Russian 5 who did not contribute to Fedorov's 5 goals was Kozlov. So there was a lot of Ovs going on in that game because I'm pretty sure an Ov on the Washington Capitals scored a goal too. Maybe 1 or 2 guys with the last name Ov. So it was an Ov night, I guess. It was an Ov night in a good way for the Red Wings, and it was an Ov night in a bad way for the Capitals. So 5-4 overtime win. Fedorov gets 5, and Joe Beninati of the Capitals told me in my interview, he said they were all tic-tac-toe beauties. He says, obviously it wasn't a shining moment for our franchise, but he's like, how many games am I going to call where the guy scores 5 goals? And this is a guy that's called Alexander Ovechkin his whole career. And I'm pretty sure that for him to, at the point of the interview that we talked about this for the Voices of Hockey, as much as Alexander Ovechkin has done, the fact that this was still pretty fresh in Joe Beninati's memory speaks volumes, especially since Fedorov actually played for the Capitals eventually, so he got to call Beninati got to call him on both sides of the face-off. Obviously, a really cool night for Red Wings, a really cool year. Obviously, the game changer year of it all that ended that 42 years of dry ice. So that's kind of what I've noticed sometimes in any kind of major sport is there is a magical moment in the season, and maybe two magical moments or even three. But when those moments happen, you get that feeling of destiny. It's like this is destiny. And then when the playoffs roll around and you get the good bounce or something like that, there's the destiny talk rising up again. So obviously, Fedorov's 5-goal game was a harbinger of success to come for the Red Wings, and they eventually won that Stanley Cup in the '97 Stanley Cup final against the Philadelphia Flyers. Now, coming back to the present, we've come to the no-cap recap portion of the program. Now, I'd already mentioned the fact that the Red Wings had a 4-0 lead, and it came to 4-3. So the locker room, even though they had won, the locker room, the mood was a little bit of like, we almost let this one slip. So talking with Andrew Kopp, this is what he had to say about it. A win's a win. We're stacking wins at this point. At this point of the year, you're never going to turn down 2 points. Our process standard needs to be a lot better, though. After the first 10 minutes, we stopped skating. We didn't have much O-zone pressure. We kind of got some rushes and scored, but just our execution coming out of our zone, not good. Earlier, we got on the forecheck. We were on our toes. Maybe we thought it was going to be an easy night after we scored 2, 3 early like that. That can happen. Our attention to detail, our intensity over the puck, our basic tape-to-tape execution was not there. We're not in the business of being mad about wins, but we have a higher standard than that, and we're going to need it to show it tomorrow night. Throwing that through the AI slang translator, we got this. A dub's a dub, you know. We're just racking up W's at this point. Ain't nobody going to be salty about snagging 2 points this far in the year, but real talk, we got to up our game big time. After the first 10, we just straight up stopped sliding. Our O-zone game was weak sauce. We got lucky with a couple of breakaways and scored, but our breakouts were straight garbage. Early on, we were all over them, forechecking them like beasts. Maybe we got cocky thinking it'd be a cakewalk after those first few goals. Happens, I guess, but our focus, gone. Intensity on the puck, MIA. Basic passes, Brick City. We ain't mad about winning, but we got way higher standards and we got to bring the heat tomorrow night. Now here's to the Red Wings bringing heat tonight against the Edmonton Oilers. Going to be a tough one going up against McDavid and Draisaitl, but hopefully they can get some kind of momentum going their way, maybe take a little bit of a lesson from tonight's letting up off the throttle, and maybe they can just keep the foot on the gas the whole 60 minutes. And as they prepare themselves for that 6th and final game of the road trip before heading home, we'll see what happens. But the point streak is still alive. The win streak is still alive. And this has been Red Wings Daily, presented to you by FanArch. And as I like to always say, LGR... I'll try it again. LGRW from the PNW.